I should know.
I'm just curious.
Sit down, I'll sit down next to the chair.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, there's a bunch of them. You know, I don't.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's everything's so crazy right now.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I feel yeah. They say three steps out of Belmont, 5 out of 4 inches. 5 out there is what Pete's driving. Now Pete's running, John Taylor.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Pete's running. I don't think there's any way.
Oh.
Yes.
I saw that.
Pete would be back.
Yeah.
No, we're there.
Yeah, well, he was airport.
That's right. I was chair of the county board.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
The guy that did user interface for we hired several times.
Yeah.
That's Nick. That's his first name. Okay. This guy. He was subcontractor. His wife's. This guy is a genius. He did myself from bare studs to finish. And it's like.
Once for the hair
No.
Yeah.
His family.
Goes back to my dad was a human life person. Both. And so that's how far back.
Fight over.
That's what he did get elected.
Good for you. They're all the same price.
They do. A lot of storefront. A lot of that is really good.
I really like your business. Downtown.
Oh, the showroom? Yeah.
My wife said. He did probably did all the flooring in the apartment.
I didn't know and I looked at the lease terms of it, and it just made sense. There was a great space of detail around the system. But you're not paying the dues on all of it, but you're right there.
We were gonna try and get down for that.
Yeah. We didn't get down. Yeah. They usually open up.
So just these, the ones that are
Check out.
So sorry.
No, wait a minute, smart chick.
Yeah.
Jim's. Three.
And that was.
Oh.
So 1,500 hours. Necessary, yeah. You would know. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's hard.
Well, it goes back, it goes all the way back.
Someone did just try to come in.
The door was open. Before you were back on.
I don't know. I haven't, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I wasn't in on the whole thing.
Live and learn.
You can't even find someone.
We're going after those.
I'll get a hold of it.
Easy element.
We're very high-tech. All together on the
Okay, well, we'll call the meeting to order. Second. Begin with the roll call.
Kurt Ardema,
I'm here.
Dave Busker,
Here.
Gil Culver,
Here.
Greg Hamlin,
Here.
Nikki Miller. Here. Cecile, sorry much. Eric Rankin.
Here.
Mark Weiss. James Woodruff.
We have a forum. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
None from staff.
None from staff, any from? The stands approved. And next will be the minutes of the March meeting, which were distributed.
Motion to approve the March 10, 2022.
We have a motion, we have a support. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same? Motion carries. At this point, we would open up for public comment. Anyone wishing to make a public comment, please go to the podium, give your name and address, and limit your remarks to 4 minutes. Public comment. There being none, we move on to the financial report. Amanda?
Good morning. Included in your packet today are the January, February, and March financial statements. March is a quarter of the way through the year. Operating revenues are at 20% of the budget. We have strong rental car commissions, fuel haulage, and parking revenues compared to the budget so far this year. Year-to-date operating expenses are at 24.7% of the approved budget before depreciation. Admin and airfield expenses are both a little bit on the high side. On the admin component, that's due to annual expenses that have been paid early in the year. And on the airfield side, it's due to seasonal overtime, fuel, and utilities. Both of those I expect to level out over the course of the fiscal year. And PFC revenues are coming in strong with collections through February. We're at 27.2%. So we're looking good right now.
Okay. Do you have any questions, comments? Be like a case of careful planning and proper execution, so kudos to the staff. Move on to items for consideration. There are none on the consent agenda. Move to the non-consent items, and starting with custodial contract.
Good morning. KBCIA, you all. Our current contract with United Commercial Services expires in July of this year. So in April, I worked with county purchasing, put contract out for bid. It was, I'll say, a very responsive bid process. We had a mandatory on-site walk around pre-bid meeting that was very well attended. We had 7 firms respond to the posting, to which United Commercial Services was the low bid. The 3-year contract cost amounts to $524,447 amount. Right up here, that comes to $173,658 annually, which is a slight increase from what we're seeing right now. We've had stable costs from them since the last bid. I think it was 167 annual costs currently, so just a little bit of a jump up to 173, but they were still low bid by quite a decent margin. The next most competitive bid was 193 annually, and the highest bid that we saw was over 500,000 annually. Mostly due to startup expansion costs. You know, some firms trying to break into the region here, so you know, finding office space, staff, acquiring the right equipment, stuff like that. So there's a large gap there, but I do recommend that the board enter into a new agreement with United Commercial Services. The agreement includes options for 2 one-year extensions at the end of the 3-year term. Questions?
Eric, can you remind me where they're based out of?
Grand Rapids.
Out of Grand Rapids.
Yep. Yeah. They did recently open an administrative office in Kalamazoo. They just got a couple new accounts in the area. I think actually right down the road from us in a couple areas. So they're doing well. They've expanded to Traverse City Airport. So they're a growing business and they've done well for us.
Yeah, I just had to advise as a public entity that we work in Kalamazoo County. Sounds like they have accounts.
Yeah. And all the local staff live locally too. They have a couple crews that come down from Grand Rapids, just like specialty for cleaning crews, but day-to-day staff are all local.
As far as review of services, have there been any complaints or any notices of like great service by any of the tenants here?
Mostly, I mean, predominantly positive feedback from tenants. they did really great sticking with us through the pandemic. It was obviously really tough for everybody. But I constantly still hear positive stuff from the airlines. We do have like a 2-week walk around. I have just a standing meeting with administrative staff with them. So we're constantly kind of trying to find things to improve on, but yeah, it's been mostly positive.
Questions? Motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same? Next is the entrance road reconstruction agreement.
Yes, so this is construction agreement number 2 that I'm bringing to the board in relation to the CARES projects, the development projects, the entrance road reconstruction. Let's see, we posted the bid for construction in late March, early April. RSNH was obviously helped out a lot with that, and along with county purchasing. We had one bidder, one responsive bidder in Peters Construction Company for the amount of $1,619,695.61. Single bidder did or will trigger a cost justification letter to the FAA because it's a federally funded project. They're going to want to see that a review was done and conducted by a sponsor or RSNH, that the costs are still competitive and relevant. So an initial assessment has been done by RSNH and the airport. We're comfortable with the cost that we see. It was slightly above engineer's estimate of 1.4, mostly having to do with materials, I think, is in that increase. So I still recommend that the board enter into an agreement with Pierce Construction to carry out the reconstruction project for the entrance road. Any questions?
From my own perspective, I guess I'd like this to kind of a quick description of when we call it the entrance road. Where are we really talking about?
Sure.
Starting and ending, and how much is involved in
I had a graphic, but it's a poor graphic for your question because it's this picture here. So it's really at the start of right to Portage Road and carrying out through just north of the terminal building, kind of in front of the ARF station. Will be all reconstructed in there with asphalt.
So being on both sides of the overhang and
Yes.
so on, so it expands to 6 lanes or whatever at that point.
Yeah, the amount of lanes in front of the terminal won't be changed at all.
Nothing changed, but
Yeah.
it's all going to be redone.
Correct, yeah, it'll all be asphalt. There's a large portion, obviously, that's concrete right now, returning to asphalt. And then the, let's see, up to the terminal building, I think we're reducing lanes from 4 to 2. That's just a capacity and makes sense as cost savings for us as well. So
Did you say the curve getting rebuilt too?
that's right. Yep.
How about the entrance? Long-term, short-term.
Yes, it is. Yep. Yeah, we're gonna do some geography changing, geometric changing in that area, just to make those lanes a little bit wider. We've had some bigger vehicles have issues getting stuck in those lanes, so both sides are going to be redone.
when we talked about landscaping before, I know part of this is kind of cleaning up the boulevard.
Yes.
Entry to
Yeah,
landscaping.
yeah, some tree removal. There's some, not all the trees, I don't think, but most of the old looking pine trees, those are gonna be removed. There's a couple of really healthy, good looking trees that flower in the spring out there still that I think would be still a nice decoration piece, but for the most part, the entrance drive there, most of those trees will be removed.
So like the tall pines that normally get the Christmas lights.
Yeah, yes.
I hope there's a long-term plan to bring some landscaping back into, I think just from an entry statement. That landscaping, the road is essential, but the landscaping is a key piece of that too, so.
Yeah.
The idea behind the landscaping is to reduce the annual maintenance.
Right.
Also to reduce wildlife attractant, i.e. birds, from roosting in those trees.
Right.
That's not good around airplanes. So that's the combination of that, but there is a plan moving forward with the landscaping.
Okay.
That accommodates both of those goals.
Great. And I'd love to see, I still like to see like Council and Bloom or one of the local groups that does plantings around the area, maybe get engaged in that if there's an opportunity for it. I know we talked about they do work at Bronson Park and I think Portage City Hall and maybe a handful of other places that are kind of the gateways or focal points of the community. Thanks.
Are we doing anything with the parking lot that's adjacent to the entry there? I know no longer in use, but that isn't,
That's,
well, the
The old-
old employee
old
lot.
employee lot, that wasn't scoped as part of this project. That may be a future development site, that may turn back into a parking lot, we're not 100% sure.
I think it's almost natural to kind of feel a little pushback on something when you only get one bid. Especially maybe these times are what's causing it, but we're really comfortable enough to pass this along. It's not our money when it comes right down to it. The CARES is all going to be government funded, this whole project. But we're talking about making sure that it has reasonable competitive costs. So you're really trusting on the FAA to look at projects going on in other areas and so on.
Well,
Is there any chance that they're going to come back and say, no, that's not right?
The FAA will require the airport to conduct that cost assessment. So we'll do that locally here with RSNH. But we have seen all their submittals, estimate submittals, and they are really competitive with what the market is demanding right now. And you touched on it, it is kind of a sign of the times. Everybody's really busy. And materials are hard to come by as well right now. So I think
I think
Alex or Nick can touch on it.
if I may, there was an earlier estimate that we received that came in prior to the actual work that was being done, but our planning estimate came in at 1.7, I believe.
Yeah.
So this is within the ballpark of what that, now that planning estimate was about 15 months ago, I think, roughly.
Yeah.
So this it's in the ballpark there. As far as the FAA, I'm not concerned about that. I'd be more concerned if we were looking to table this, just because A, the condition of the road, and B, we have to spend that money by April 24th.
The trends you went through this a little earlier that we saw in there are exactly the trends we're seeing in the market right now. The estimate was developed around the holidays, like 4 or 5. A lot of the spike costs are asphalt costs. You're seeing right now the weather pricing. There's a shortage of concrete. Pipe costs actually going up, especially in Michigan right now, and some of the neighboring states, PVC piping. So we looked at those immediately, and those were the trends that we're seeing. So I don't think it's gonna be a surprise to FAA. Those prices are a little bit high. Everything else seems pretty in line with what we've experienced over the last year, but the trends over the last 3 months were definitely realized in the bid pricing. And I think if it was, 3 months down the road, those prices may even be a little more escalated.
Is there storm sewer part of the project? Is that in the scope? Is that what the pipe cost?
I believe so, yes.
So some replacement, especially where the roadways being widened a little bit or standardized. We're replacing where we need to replace some of the structures.
Yeah, it's a substantial cost for a roadway at that point, but I think the scope is bigger than just repaving the road, right? We're talking about reconstructing drive and some of the underground work and some of the landscaping. And I think that's where it starts to make a little more sense, although it is always concerning with one bid. But if we got estimates from engineers and from a contractor, and I assume the estimate, the cost wasn't shared with the contractor, right? They did that independent.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I just think we need to make sure we've done our fair due diligence so that we're comfortable with pushing it forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we certainly don't want the FAA saying later, hey, you guys are on the hook for a portion of that. It costs too much.
We've been communicating with the district office a lot throughout, the progress of these projects. So we'll have another call with them soon.
And the number that I believe was shared with them was 1.7.
It was
anyway.
1.7, yeah.
So this is going to be in line with what we shared. Because we shared the planning estimates, we shared that with that.
Sure.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion. Support. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, the same? Motion carried. Here's the development.
Eric's pulling that up. We, instead of doing 4 separate action items, we pulled it to one. And we won't ask on any questions, but just made it for ease of administration of the meeting. Just one lump. It's all under cares.
Legs would be getting tired up here if I stood.
We get you a chair.
We'll keep asking questions.
Okay, yeah, so as Craig mentioned, this is a request to approve 4 proposals from RSNH for various design, engineering, and construction administration fees. I put together a quick slide just to kind of, for everybody to visualize where we are in each of the processes. So the ARF renovation project, we've had the design phase with RSNH approved already. We've had the construction agreement with OAK approved and executed, and the construction administration is where we are now. So that's what I'm asking for today. The entrance road reconstruction, we've had the design phase approved. Obviously, we just discussed the construction agreement with Peters, and the construction administration with RSNH is included in this package. The cargo apron, we will be entering the design phase of that with the execution of this package for the southern apron there that we're looking to develop. And then last but not least, this package also contains the design phase agreement with RSNH for the SRE facility. So that's design phase in short, but it includes design, any environmental requirements that the FAA requires, as well as the proposals and packaging and level. So that's for the design phases, and then the construction agreements or construction administration for the entrance road and ARF renovation. those will, obviously, it's for construction administration. The good thing for us is that both of these projects will be taking place at essentially the same time throughout or over the summer this year. So we were able to save on some administrative costs, kind of being two places at once for that.
So for clarification, so the two projects on the top are at the same time in the summer with construction, right?
That's
So-
right.
So the second two, are those two paired from the design standpoint too?
Their timeline is paired, I guess I could say.
They're two different.
But
completely
they-
different projects.
They are two different projects.
One's all engineering and one is, I'll call it mix of engineering and architecture.
And can you provide some more detail on the cargo process? I see the sketch on the screen here with, I assume this looks like the scope of this is designed for the apron, right?
That's
Not
right.
For any sort of facility.
That's right, just the apron.
Yeah, it's apron, and we followed from the master plan, the 2012 master plan, the specs for there, which I believe were 400 by 300 or 600 by 300. I can't remember exactly off the top, but it's all apron. There's no infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, things are.
And the location is the south and near the land that the airport owns.
Correct. And I would say calling it cargo apron might be a little too narrow. It's going to be an apron for future development.
Yeah, right.
Say general aviation. So
Right.
It's basically the idea is to stimulate the growth that was anticipated in the 2000 master plan and support that.
sure.
Eric, question, what's the road name there? Because I cannot read it.
Taxiway Foxtrot.
Okay, I'm like, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. It's actually, it should be Taxiway
Yeah, I
Bravo.
was gonna say, Bravo, not Foxtrot. Yeah. So that as well, that would be inside the current fence,
I think it could all.
because that's the next challenge that we've talked about, is expanding onto the 80 acres would require quite a bit of infrastructure.
That's right. So I
Fence, power lines.
right, yeah, the fence, I think the apron itself will be able to be within the fenced area, but if there were a facility that were built adjacent to it, we may have to amend the perimeter.
And roughly how far south of the, we'll call it beacon hangar, or the beacon currently?
Let's see,
What's,
so.
there's not intersecting, what would be Bravo?
Yeah, Bravo 2, yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, Bravo 2 is, I'd say Bravo 2 is right here. So,
Okay.
and right here is gate 12, so that's the double wide gate.
Yeah.
So it'll just be just south of that.
I think it's good to be doing some long-range planning for diversifying the usage of the facility and trying to stimulate some interest too. I think having it ready to go provides that opportunity for us. And it's been part of the master plan. It has been correct for 10 years. It's hard to pursuing it while we can.
It's a big piece of the equation when it comes to expansion in the area for really any business that's looking to build or private facility that's looking to build. It's just having that infrastructure.
And our land, the airport's land that's there requires aviation use. So
That's
having this aviation rink is going to be, to utilize that land, this type of facility has to happen.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, I guess it'd be good to see kind of again, an overhead view of where that sits in relation to Kenco and that drive coming in. It's not strike away. I don't know what that is on the east side of Portage Road, but and it's been a while since we've run to see the master plan.
The updated map of, we could, if we had a copy of the AMP.
Yeah.
Show where that was.
So, I mean, from a logistics standpoint, you got Kenco and FedEx right there. It makes sense to have an airport piece from a cargo perspective. But
Right.
it'd probably be just,
Right about here.
Right
That's
about
where
there.
we're at.
yeah, so that,
Just north of Striker Way, it's like Striker Way was kind of through there.
now Strike Away is in that big field. So you
Right.
see the air zoo, you're not seeing the current
Right.
1941 building or Kenco or FedEx right now on that. Right.
But I think the Kenco building sits north of that tree line. South.
Ken-
south of
Kenco
there.
sits just
That's
south
another
south-
building
south.
Right here, right? It's gonna be right about here.
about there. So that's right off, yeah, that tree line's right there.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's where that drive is right now.
Striker Way, I think, is at that tree line farther south.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, so the line with the south.
You're right, correct. So it'd be just to the north. Okay. Almost behind there. Too. While they're expanding Kenco, it'd be almost behind. But access for that from a street perspective would probably be down Millen, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
No, that, like, massive road, which runs.
Yep.
Stop there.
Yeah. Which Masterbrook is currently not used.
Just a Striker Way.
Right.
And really that potential expansion for master plan, T hangers, whatever would be still to the south of that in that next.
Yeah, there's an
Field.
entire taxi lane. Network, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
I may have the dates a little bit, but because the master plan was being completed while that purchase
Was in
was
process.
in process. What I can't tell you is when the drawings were done and, you know, all that, so, so it doesn't really accommodate that full, let's say, that full discussion on this element. That's why I said, you know, when we do our next master plan, it really needs to focus on general aviation.
I was gonna bring that up, not to muddy the waters, but roughly every 10 years, you're doing a master plan update.
Yeah.
So
10 to 15 years,
we're there.
Yeah, it's, we've got it on our CIP for 27, I believe,
Right after the road.
right after
section.
the cross section.
Okay.
We ain't got no money.
Great.
Hey, Greg, Eric's got it up on the screen.
Okay, yeah,
So you can kind of see the new building.
Yep, yep,
Striker Way sits between.
right between those.
Kenco.
So it would be north then, it'd be north of where the new,
Yeah,
maybe probably almost in between the air zoo and the new Kenco.
right.
Roughly. Yeah, okay,
But that tree line's still accurate. That roughly is.
You're correct. you're correct, yep.
So I think it's important that we're, even if our plan is a little dated, what Greg brought up a point that, you know, in all of our aviation related documents and so on, general aviation is on the rise, which is a bit of a surprise when you look at the circumstances, but more and more companies are looking at, maybe that's a better way to get our people from here to there, just like Stryker already does. And for whatever reason, if people have used airplanes, they're selling faster than they ever did. So I think that it's good that we're looking at something that would help support our idea of trying to do something with cargo. And at the same time, we need to make sure that it fits into the growth of GA, which in my mind says we assume we probably still have a waiting list on hangars. So talking about a waiting list on something that's already now starting to climb, that accelerates speed, I think, in order to make sure that they end up here, not somewhere else.
Are there any opportunities, Greg, for private developers to put any facility to store aviation planes? I mean, I know we have that already in some sense.
Right.
But
We haven't had, I'll say, a strong enough business discussion about that. I mean, you know, the three of us will play airport in our meetings and sometimes, you know, talk about those things and how can it happen. but I wouldn't say enough to where we've had definitive, this is what our plan is. Because in my mind, we need to be thinking holistically about, I'll say South 27, about what's going on down there, because there's a lot of activity down there existing within the T hangars. And so how can we support, promote some of that continuing, but also possibly continuing to the south side?
I think the difficulty, I think there's been discussions in the past when we kind of had a working group that looked at that property and what do we do with it? How do we make something out of it and talking to some of those entities that you're familiar with.
Right.
But obviously the difficult piece is you guys are ready to roll now.
Right.
And when you talk, working with the FAA, that brings everything to a screeching halt. So
Well, and that, I've had initial discussions on the land release process, and I think we need to be clear with the word is years that land release. If we wanted to, if we're going to go that way, and that's even if they allow it. I mean, I think use it as an example when I'm talking to the staff. The one I was involved in Fort Wayne in 2009 is still going on for a land release. The 3-acre parcel that wasn't even on airport property for 4 years. So this is not a short process to do that, unless we say to the FAA, we're going to pay your $1.7 million, whatever it was, back, and they allow it. They never had that happen before, so they don't know how to do that.
Yeah, it's complicated.
So it is a complicated process.
Well, the one, there would be an option there to say, well, let's talk about maybe buying back half of it. Yeah, I guess just having sort of a plan that says just what you're referring to, that maybe you didn't have an option. Be out there looking at the market for a private company that might be willing to put something in there and be of service, but not necessarily be aviation related to where it would qualify as an FAA.
It's part of the challenge for.
It was big time.
The upfront infrastructure and ownership, there's just a lot of pieces to it. But if you had an aviation related business, and I'm thinking more specifically just to the GA hangars, right? If we've got a demand and we don't necessarily have the dollars to fund a new structure, there might be somebody out there that's willing to say,
And
I'll
we've
take
had,
on
and
the
we've,
risk.
we've had those
Build it.
conversations. Yeah, and I should preface this, I'm talking about land release being needed for if we wanted to do something that was non-aeronautical.
Right,
If
right.
it's aeronautical related, we can, as long as, just, I'll call it normal process.
Still could be through the fence type of operation or whatever,
Yes,
depending on how you would.
yes, exactly.
well, if you look at the 80 acres, I mean, the stuff that's directly adjacent to the airport, yeah, aeronautical use, but could you have that from the street side? And so maybe the 20 acres of it on the west end is that cargo facility that semi or whatever can pull in, but other side of the fence is obviously airport.
Right.
So that, it's a good mix.
Sure.
Potential.
Yeah.
It's hard to make more property around the airport.
Yes.
It really is.
Yeah. Can't add more floors.
No, to grab 80 acres was a win. In my
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. We have any other discussion, questions? Take a motion.
I'll make the motion.
second.
Have a motion, have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next item, unfinished business. Anything to bring up? New business? There being none, we'll move on to the airport director.
Thank you, Miguel. Director's report for May 2022. As I always do, I try to just show our strategic framework as a reminder. Our goals: maintain financial stability and operational excellence, growing the number of passengers to 350,000, utilizing our property fully, having modern facilities, and then public has a positive perception of the airport. We continue to work on the strategic plan with Peter Doms, if, for those of you who remember Peter. And, he's been coaching us along the way. We're getting back, I say, up to speed with Amanda returning earlier, but we've got, the normal audit process on hers and we're entering budget. So it's been a little bit slow. Peter and I are having some conversations on how we can kind of move us forward at a little bit of a, I'll say, a faster pace. If you remember, and if you in there, a lot of the things that are in the strategic plan are a lot of, I'll say, planning related things that are front loaded for basically Eric, Amanda, and myself. And so from I'll call a staff workload issue, it's very difficult to keep us at that pace. So we're kind of sliding in the schedule a little bit, only because there's only so many hours. There are 163 hours in a work month, so that's I've got to make sure that Eric has the ability to see his kids, and the same with Amanda as well. So we're still moving forward. It's not the pace that I certainly would like it to be, but I also want to make sure we have a healthy work-life balance. So if there's any specifics on it, don't hesitate to ask. Air service statistics. I've got March and April up here. Just the gist of it is American in March had a 93% load factor, which averages about 3 empty seats per plane, which is pretty darn good. And then Delta, and you'll see in April as well, their load factor, and I'm going to call it a reported load factor, but it's not necessarily an accurate one, and I'll explain that in a second, is 83%. We're obviously down. I believe we're up year over year, but we're down in the number of seats for March just because of the loss of the combination of the loss of our normal seats, but also the loss of United. But certainly the people are, I'll say, responding and jumping over to American because their numbers are better than they have been. I'm going to jump to April. You can see kind of the same things. Basically a 92% load for American, and it says 77.4%. This is kind of where I want to talk about Delta. What they're doing is they're reporting in their monthly report that they send to our finance staff, and it's got the number of seats that are in there. And but what's happening is they're bringing in 70 seaters, 90 seaters, and stuff, basically because whatever pilot's available to get them over here. The problem with it is that they are selling those airplanes to 50. So when you'll see our calculation show a 90 seater in there, but there's only 50 seats being sold on that because they're flying that over and they're making that decision in the couple days beforehand. So they can't really sell those seats unless you had a bunch of 50 people walk up in Detroit and say, yeah, we'd like to account Zoo. So that's why I'm not bothered by the 77.4% as reported. As I calculated, it'd be about 82% if we're just doing what they're available to sell. So, but even then, I'm taking my own numbers with a grain of salt.
Question on that. Do we know how Delta's reporting it to themselves?
The short answer is I do not know exactly how they're doing it, except for that. They're reporting the numbers as they're reporting the numbers.
Right.
But to really what you're going at is, does network planning look at it like that?
Right.
The short answer is network planning is probably, as I've learned over the past, network planning doesn't care about loads. Okay. They care about revenues. Okay. And so they're going to look at those revenues. The good news is the cost for flying the CRJ 7 or 900 in here is kind of incremental in there, and in the sense of it's not a totally different type of airplane. It's just a larger same aircraft.
But Frank, they would have the ability to sell premium seats, first class seats, if they knew in advance of those.
If they knew it in advance, but they're not selling any of that.
They're just upgrading people who have been in those seats, probably, right? Last time.
Yeah, probably at the gate they're doing it, I'm sure. So it makes those people happy. The sad part for us is that they're not selling that. Right. I wish it would be in the schedule for 70 for 90 seats, because that would certainly have it. I mean, because they're averaging 43, 44 seats roughly full. Okay. And I'll just say, looking ahead, this number is going to stay pretty static. 6310. I believe that with the one before 6582. You're just going to see it range from that. Delta and United have both, not United, Delta and American have both informed me that they're not putting any extra seats in the marketplace because they don't have the pilots or planes. Why? But I really think they're really saying pilots, but that's the word they're using to us. I have a meeting with both of them, middle of June, coming up for that. Actually, my Delta meeting might be a little bit earlier, just to find out, what are their plans? I mean, they do have a fourth loaded, I believe, in September-ish, October-ish, out there. But I don't have any confidence that they are really going to do any of that. So
During your meeting, you might want to ask them what their retirements.
for the 145, American plans on getting rid of it really fast. So that is a big question for me.
Right.
And a big assumption, as Amanda and I did a forecasting meeting yesterday, Tuesday, excuse me, was the meeting to look at what we think going forward. I don't see us having 50 seaters, but I've said that in the
because
past.
they have to upgauge the
Yeah.
equipment.
Yeah. And my concern is do they put in two 700s, which means we have loss of, we have gain if it's two 700s, but if from our normal standpoint, or then it's 140 seats. But if they put in 3, then hey, I'm happy with 3 700s. If American is that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the problem. They don't have.
So
Yeah.
Good lows and good yields to make sure we're
Yeah.
on that list, right?
Yeah.
We're those limited planes.
right.
Our yields are, I'll say, I don't have the tool that I used to have, but probably in the top half in Chicago hubs, just based on what I see. So I don't think we're not lagging. Obviously, the next slide will kind of show. The next slide will kind of show. I showed this last meeting, and I just thought it was a good stat to kind of continue to share. Is airfares, because a lot of the community scuttlebutt is we're too expensive, et cetera, et cetera. And the short answer is, yeah, when you look at the all airfares, we are. But when you take into account what we have, American and Delta, you can see we're much closer in line than we are. When you're talking about a Flint and a Detroit and the Grand Rapids, they have a combination Spirit, Allegiant, Frontier. I don't put Southwest as a low cost carrier, or excuse me, a low fare carrier. They build themselves a low cost carrier. But American and Delta is kind of what we're comparing apples to apples, and you can see we're even lower than Grand Rapids on that. So I think those are important as you're talking to people to get the full understanding of what they are. Now I understand if somebody is going to Orlando and looking at that, we're going to be more expensive than one of the others because it's just cheap to get to Orlando from Michigan, in the sense that you have so many places and airlines competing for that. So this is a different stat. This is how busy are we as an airport, to Gil's point about general aviation growing. I wanted to know kind of how busy we are as an airport. And I see it all the time as I look out the window, we're busy. But then I started putting the stats together, and I will tell you, ignored the total through December part. That was just a cell error on my part. But you can see we had 46,700 operations, and that's everything at the airport. That's GA, which includes your Western missions. You've got a lot of flight activity now reporting on the airfield. So you can see we're busy, and we're up for the year as well, for 2022. Will that continue? I don't know, but I've got a hunch it will, as long as the weather continues, because there's a lot of need for flight training, and I can tell you, folks at Western are in the pattern. We've got 3 or 4 folks here that are doing work, getting people out, and it's busy. So I would say we're a busy airport. As I look at this, I believe we trail, obviously Grand Rapids, Detroit, but Pontiac is busier as well. I mean, that's a busy general aviation facility. Battle Creek is busier in the sense because it's all training all the time. So anyway, I just thought it would be interesting to share with you. We collect these stats and share them with MDOT. So that's all on my statistics, I believe. Yeah. Any questions on any of the stats or anything? Okay, I just wanted to share a couple other things with the board. We're doing another TSA pre-check event, September 12th through the 16th. Right? Is that the date? Okay, I thought so. Okay, that's what I had written down. So the 12th through the 16th. So put it on your calendar if you need to. You're going to see as we get a little bit closer, a little more promotion of it. But we've already got it secured. If you remember the one we did, I forget, it's already been a year. Okay, yeah, it was in the fall. We surpassed expectations by almost 100 people on their expectations. So that was really good. And then I wanted to just call out Cecile. Thank you for taking your boss to a meeting of the Michigan Business, the Michigan Business Travel Association. I'm sorry, I went to the Michigan Business Aviation Association meeting last week.
You were cheating on it.
Exactly. But Cecile's a member and has been active in that organization for a long time. And so they had us bring your boss event. So I kind of giggled because obviously I'm not her boss, it's the other way around. But I don't want to just call out because it was very helpful for me to meet some of the people. I was able to meet the folks that they replaced Cecile with Kellogg's. 2 people. I thought that was kind of funny. 2 people to replace her at Kellogg's, which is very helpful because I could talk to them about what they see moving forward. United was there, so their sales folks, I was able to meet with them, and I met the new Delta sales folks for the area. So very productive day spent there. Excuse me. So that's it from the director's report. Any questions?
Do you know with the TSA check event, and I can probably reach out to them, but do they have any materials around that they're supplying to you guys for social media and email?
Yes.
Okay. Would it be possible to get copies of those when they come out?
Yeah, I can. Okay. It's the same.
It's the same as last time.
It's the same as last time.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll be able to do that. We might even have some. I'll ask Garrett. And you'll see a social media blast probably a month. They don't like it to go out too early.
Right.
So, but we'll continue to do that. Yes.
Yeah, going back to the airline seat fill ratios, when we start talking about American at 93%, and historically, at what point, the good old days, did airlines look at those kind of numbers and say, huh, maybe we ought to add a flight there.
If this
3
was
days a week or whatever, and then.
If this was normal times, they'd already be adding a 3rd flight. They just don't have the ability to do so. And when I talked with them in February, they even said, you're a healthy market, we're doing well. We just can't put any more capacity in there. That's what's frustrating, because you can do everything you can. People say, what is the airport doing? Well, we're doing a lot, and at the same time, we're not doing anything because there really is nothing for us to do. We don't have the airplanes. We don't own them. I can tell you, just related to this, I've asked our marketing team to kind of slow down the advertising, in the sense I don't want people to see advertising and start looking at seats and find out that our fares are through the roof because you can't get a seat. So slowing that down and actually making a little bit of shift to more of promotion of the value of the airport to the community, as opposed to, get your butt in one of our seats. to fly. So I hope that'll change. It will change at some point. Something will give at some point. And to Eric's point about whether they're 50 or 70 seaters, that's the conversation. That's where we have to direct ourselves as an airport, is to be prepared, to have what we have with 70-seat aircraft. Otherwise, we'll I call it death by 1,000 paper cuts.
My understanding, 50 seaters are supposed to start being retired in December.
The only thing I've heard was about 50% of the 50 seaters will be gone in a year. So that's a year from now.
20, they had 114. they're down to 57.
Okay, so we're down another, it's every 50% ever there. And Delta has said they're going to hold on a little bit longer, but a lot of it's just coming up when it's coming up to their maintenance checks. And,
Right.
you're not going to spend a few $1 million to reinvest in an airplane that your economics just aren't there.
I think any outside connections we can make with the airlines, independent of normal communications, and Cecile did, those help to separate Kalamazoo when we're looking at a pool of markets that all are being served by 50 seaters. And if the 50 seaters are rapidly going down, we just need to make sure that they think about Kalamazoo differently than they do some of our peers out there. And if our planes are full, so that's the most important message, right? That our planes are full, but we also need some of those outside contacts to continue to bear fruit too, as much as possible.
And we need to sell them that we can be successful them at other hubs. Because one of the things that's hurting us is our proximity to the hubs, because they don't get to spread those costs out over further cost per available seat mile, and it's such a short stage length that it hurts us.
If we can get, if they can bring aircraft in that offer like premium, like first class, I think that might be beneficial also, because I did hear that United, they had 550 in here that offered 10 first class seats. We actually taking passengers from Grand Rapids.
Oh.
They were coming down here.
Sure. Oh yeah.
To get on that airplane. They got upset. So
the loyal flyers will follow the upgrades.
yes.
And we still have a grant too, right, for
As
Southern Hub service. So
I
it
tell-
seems like that would help elevate us. as
I have
well.
a million reasons why Americans should fly to Charlotte. The opportunity for that grant is $1 million. But at the same time, and they were honest with me when they offered up that letter of support, is that, hey, we don't have the ability to do anything in Charlotte, at least until 2023, because of the work that they're doing at the airport there. So
It's just hard to, at least in my mind, equate, you got a guaranteed revenue. And if why that would not be placed in front of an at-risk flight from another airport. It's guaranteed revenue, right? And that's what the grant.
it's guaranteed support, yeah. But they just want to make sure they already have the existing in place, and ours is a risk just because it's new business.
It's a risk, but backed by $1 million grant.
Right.
I think another point on you brought up the idea that, part of the problem, if you want to call it that, is that we're close to the hubs that we service. So that you're losing passengers because they say, what the hell, I'll drive to Detroit or whatever the case is. And so that seems to me like, you can put the statistics together, that leverages into a better position to be able to say, what about trying to get a connection to a hub that's further away?
Right.
So that, is there some way to track how many lost customers we may have because they chose to drive?
Yeah, our last leakage study, which was done, in 19 or 18? I'll say 19 based on 18 numbers. How's that? And it showed we lose about 800 passengers a day to other airports. And that's not an insignificant number. If you think about our average is about 450, another 800, that's 1250. So you're looking at about 425,000 employments is what the potential of this airport is. That's why I tell my friends and anybody who's willing to listen is if we just plopped Kalamazoo County in the middle of North Dakota, we'd have 1 million employments or 1 million passengers. But it's just our proximity to Grand Rapids, Detroit, Chicago, and South Bend even too. We don't leave a lot to South Bend, but from Kalamazoo County. But if you live over by St. Joe, I mean, I know one of our prominent folks who lives over that way goes down to South Bend because it's easier, it's closer to their house. So it's just, again, it's part of our proximity. So.
And I don't think we're not here to compete with Chicago or Detroit necessarily.
No.
If we can catch that passenger who's going to go connect to Detroit anyway, but fly from Grand Rapids, that's who it makes more sense to fly from here.
And
that's where
our air service consultant says we're not losing people to Grand Rapids who are flying Delta or American. We're losing people to Grand Rapids who are jumping on Allegiant, Southwest, those kinds of things. Or if they're doing something, they're doing it because there's a nonstop, the United to Denver or American. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, not necessarily. If it's something that's going over Detroit anyway, say you're going to Allentown, Pennsylvania, we're keeping
capturing
that
most of that.
We're capturing, right?
Anything else?
All right, great. Thank you, everyone.
Greg.
I guess I got 3 items. One, and you kind of talked about a little bit earlier, just uptick on the GA side. So definitely crazy there. I think I might have mentioned it even at our last meeting. We look at the aircraft that are out there, less than 3% are on the market for sale right now. Versus 10 years ago, there was 30% of the aircraft on the market for sale. So there's nothing available. It's kind of found the trend at the real estate market right now. When it does come up, they go quick. I've heard of aircraft that somebody closed on it and getting ready to take off and bring it back to home base, and they sold it sitting right there. So it's really nuts in aviation right now. We see some of the challenges though. Fuel costs we're seeing at the pump on the street are the same thing here at the airport. So our wholesale fuel just went above $5 a gallon. I've never seen that in 34 years I've been in aviation. And here at Kalamazoo, I mean, Jet A is in the mid $8 a gallon range. You go to the East Coast, we're in the $10 to $12 a gallon range. So it's gonna hit aviation hard. Just that end of it. Global supply chain issues. Tires are in short supply. Aviation tires are a very small piece of what the manufacturers make, anyways. But we're seeing across the board consumables, aviation grease. They had a large fire in Rockton, Illinois last year that basically wiped out 4 major greases that are used in the aircraft. And so you can't get grease to lubricate certain things in an aircraft. So you're seeing aircraft that can't come out of maintenance events because they can't. So never mind the fact that they don't have the personnel to do the maintenance and or the personnel to fly. So a lot of rolling issues that we're hearing supply chain issues all across the board, but there's some aviation specific ones for it. So still in our facility where we're at, we're tenant Duncan. Duncan is still working vigorously on updates to Hangar 2, and Wheels Up is supposed to be there later this summer. So you'll see some more activity there. So that's a good thing. Not just tenant space anymore. It'll be aircraft maintenance, which hasn't occurred for animals for the past 15 years at that facility. And then the other thing I want to mention is just Craig mentioned is just activity on the south side of the airport. So T-hangar area. If we look at the businesses that are there, Kalamazoo Aircraft, Cirrus Aircraft, their regional sales manager has got a hangar there. He's got aircraft coming in and out of there on a regular basis. Some challenge there for him, not just piston aircraft, but now he's got single engine jet aircraft that are coming in there. Riley Aviation is busy. Got the Pilots Association, when we talk about fuel, self-serve fuel station down there, which is a pinch point. I know I've had conversations with Craig about that, just the number of businesses there. You got a flight school that's operating out of there, Calero Flight School, which is the tenant of Duncan, is moving out of Duncan, moving down to the T hangars. So that's gonna be another pinch point. Parking issues. So there's gonna be 3 or 4 different flight training type organizations down there on T hangars, which is an ideal scenario. So I think we've got to address that as an airport as well, how we best manage that area. But T hangar activity in general, whether you see it or not, it's a different sandbox, we'll say, than what we're playing with here at the terminal. So pretty wide open space, a lot of ramp space. You go down there and it's aircraft trying to dodge aircraft, dodging people, dodging vehicles, dodging fuel trucks that are coming in to offload fuel for Duncan. So interesting place down there right now.
I think to Greg's point, this is something that staff we're having conversations about, and how do we best move forward, and you'll see some recommendations from the board, maybe later this year is how we can approach some of this stuff. But at the same time, we have to balance it out with airport needs, FAA, what can we do, and also the libertarian spirit of general aviation pilots.
Yes. Yeah, it's a little bit like herding chickens, I think, at times, down there, because while everybody should play by the same rules, they may not always play by the same rules. Right. So to the point of expansion, we don't have enough hangar space for whether it's GA, piston aircraft, all the way up to jet aircraft, here at the airport, there's a need. So to your point, I think that's an area to address. We've had a waiting list for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been here at the airport. So there's never enough space to have aircraft, but we're seeing it a lot converging on there, and some of them aren't even there. They're headed there at the end of this month. So the 4 aircraft, training aircraft, they're going down there. They've been pretty busy at Duncan as a tenant, and they're moving down there. So yeah, this is kind of an update again from the south side. What I see on the GA side is we've seen a huge uptick even on Duncan's ramp, aircraft in and out. To Craig's point, it's been busy. Our flying is up. We're busy, both domestically and internationally. So it's a good time to be in aviation. It's a good time to get in aviation, but we can't seem to get people quick enough. So,
How many planes is Stryker have?
we've got 3 here. So
And they're busy out there.
we're busy. Yep. Fourth quarter last year was probably our busiest quarter in my recent memory. A little slow coming out of the beginning of this year with uptick with COVID, but we're definitely back at probably international trip a month, which is normal for the past, but we're hitting almost on 2 international trips. So it's things are opening up. We're seeing a lot more flexibility in traveling around the world. There's still a lot of unknowns. You got to do a lot of research on different places, but trying to get in and out, different requirements are sometimes change daily or locally. Not necessarily just country related, but it could be city related. So it's definitely a challenge there when you travel. But our folks are definitely needing to get out, and a lot of pent up energy in that regard. So,
Dave, I just wanted to share some things I acquired here. Some historical data about the Kalamazoo Airport. And I acquired it from a guy here in Kalamazoo, who's kind of an old, he lived downtown. His last name Weissman, maybe something you know who he might be. But he gave me these because he thought they ought to be housed here at the airport. One's a historical write-up, one's a picture of the airport back in the 20s. And the other one is something real interesting, and you might be able to help with this. It's a stock certificate for Kalamazoo Airport Association. Donald O. Butman, Woody's dad, I would imagine, purchased back in the day, and it's 1 share for $10. And we don't even know, we're trying to do some research if it has to do with the airport or if it was something, Pilots Association or something like that. I just thought it was interesting, and eventually I'm going to get a frame and be out here at the airport. Anybody wants to take pictures of it, read it, go ahead.
Like 1925, I don't know if I
I think you know that.
That's possible.
Or smack me.
You saying that he owns the airport?
I don't know. No, I own the stock, so maybe I do. I have a sticky hunch, just like that White River Zinc Mining Company stock.
A couple of quick things from the county, May 2nd, our county administrator controller started, Kevin Cadman. We also went out, everybody bid on the American Rescue Act. We had over $140 million request for $52 million of American Rescue Act that the county received. But we spent $12 million of it already, of which about 9.3 million was for 1,000, and then 80 or 7,500 pay for folks that had interaction with the public. They call them essential employees, and so that 9.2 was paid out to those employees. And, so now we're down to 40 million. So we have to decide if 40 million gets the 140 that requested. It's, everything you can think of, bus, loss, accommodations, discovery counts. The other thing is, do any of you know what the STEP program is for international travel? Okay.
Travel enrollment program.
Yeah, and you may, I can send you some stuff, but if you're in another country, you may want to, right? Would that be a
Yeah,
wise-
it's in the documents that I give to my international travelers. I give them the information on how to sign up for it.
Yeah, so if something goes wrong with the country or something, or you know, then the embassy reaches out to you and says,
So, great.
yeah, I wasn't going to be politically incorrect. I was just going to say generic. Yeah. So if you want it, you want to give it to them or send it to them, the information.
Yeah, step.state.gov, but it's part of the State Department, their program. So you can put in, you know, that you're traveling, who your emergency notification contacts are, and then the embassy or the government has that, and they can reach out to the local embassy if something is going wrong. If you're, you know, found unconscious, then it's easier for them to find your, you know, next of kin or person contact information.
Any questions on the county? Kurt?
Sure. So one first question, I guess, the WMU facility on Kilgore Road, is that in use? A little bit, kind of, okay.
Engineering uses part of it. I think there's still an aircraft in the hangar, but not sure how much use it is.
Well, I'm just thinking, you know, like master planning, we're looking at all the sites around the airport, just curious what the status of that.
And that's still, correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, it's still owned by, the property is owned by Western, but it's not by the airport, even though it's.
Right, no, I know, yeah, I know. It's
Kinda
Western,
inside the
but it'd be
fence.
nice to have Western at the table and be thinking about what's the best way to put that property to use from their standpoint and from the airport standpoint.
There was a scuttlebutt, I don't know if it's valid or not, but there was some aircraft over here just
Okay.
because they're bursted seams at Battle Creek and do some flight training out of here, but I haven't heard anything more on that.
Near their main campus, that would be. Makes more sense to bus in 25.
It works for how long? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Well, it's great to hear the updates on the GA side. Just, I think that's a piece that we don't hear often enough or frequently enough, just 'cause we're not exposed to it as much for some of us on board. So appreciate the updates. I'm glad there's growth there, and I think it speaks to the need to do some more master planning. On the commercial air service side, I appreciate all the updates. I think it helps us to see these stats and know where we're at. And just, I think I mentioned it at our last meeting, I think we need to have a sense of urgency. As a board, I know staff already deals with that with our commercial service, but the market trends are changing. We need to be ready to adapt and be creative and kind of rally the community around that initiative as quickly as we can, because it's changing. So pre-COVID, we were, how many flights a day? 13 to 15, 5 right now. So COVID's a big piece of that, but it's hard to justify 3 flights if you're Delta. It's hard to justify 2 flights if you're American. So we need to consistently be working on how do we get, and I say this to the board too, because I know staff's focused on it, but we need to rally the community around pushing that initiative as much as we can. I don't want to be here 12 months from now or 18 months from now, and we're down to 1 airline. Or I think we've got opportunities to grow. We've got a healthy, strong, economically vibrant community. So not having the air service linked to that level in the other parts of the community, just it doesn't compute for me. So I'd love to see the growth that we're seeing around the region linked to air service growth too. And I think it's possible. So that's my statement. Thanks.
Nikki?
Something that I've been thinking about lately, and I know, for the past couple of years, because of COVID and everything, we haven't had the community activities like we did before, specifically the airfare. So wondering if that's something that, is in the long-term plan and returning in 23 or 24, if that's been brought up at all. And then I was wondering if anybody else here gets the email newsletter from the Lansing Airport. They hadn't been doing it for several years, and then I just it restarted back up. So it's just interesting to see what they're doing, specifically like what we're talking about. They're expanding cargo and everything on their side too. Right. So if anybody wants me to forward it, so you can sign up for it, do that. Otherwise, you can sign up for it on their website. Just your finger on the pulse. Sure.
So to the point of your first question, I forget the first. On the airfare.
Yeah.
So yeah, the big difficulty we have right now is staff availability to do the work to do it.
Mhm.
And that's it's a lot of work to put one of those together. So I've got Eric busy running these projects that have to be done. Amanda is busy on her end. So we do have it slated for 2023.
Okay.
Now there'll be an additional staff person that can aid by spreading some of the load around on some of the other things. So, yeah, those are a lot of work.
Yeah.
So,
And having said on that, and everything, I know how much time the staff puts into it. I also know it's kind of this time of year that the committee would start meeting to get things moving for the next year. So.
So it's just Kella let me know that they're back to 90% of their pre-pandemic ticketing levels. So they are at travel again. We're just looking for more flights here.
One thing you talked about, out of order, so I apologize. The FedEx had their dedication of the ribbon cutting. It was quite impressive, 315,000 square feet. We took a tour of the technology and stuff of these packages, belts and the computers and stuff, sending them to this location, to this truck and stuff at a high speed. It's very impressive, and I think you're going to see a lot more coming out of there. So when you're talking, obviously they're gearing up for big things. Sure, that very impressive. Got a package sitting out there for 3 days.
maybe to wrap it.
It was a couple I wanted to grab. Outdoor hanger or umbrella, no. Thank you.
All right. And with that, we are adjourned.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I'm assuming everything went through. When I was.
They would fight between writing with the.
Okay.
No, and then like. And it was just so cute. The youngest one's so cute.
Yeah.
He's like, no, it wasn't real, but that was very real.
I'll send you a, you got a full graph of it closer. It's for 57. Yeah, well, the one I got, and it shows. So like,
I don't resist that.
well, this
So,
is.
So she's always like, been a dot, but she does not put that shit on. We're not.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You know, like, you want to know what stuff we
No, this letter's gone. This one here, that's still there. This is the Jackson way. And that's the yeah, I mean, the lesser, so.
I have no idea what it is. I think the 700.
No, actually, they probably.
No, it's something. Airport seems like. Could be, yeah.
Well, I don't know. We got a meeting later this week.
So.